All right, you guys, welcome. We are in week 6 of the SOS community building cohort. This week, we're focusing on women. It is Women's Month. And today, serendipitously so, is International Women's Day. So today I'm joined by Pia Leichter. Am I saying that right? I don't think I've ever said your last name out loud.
It's fine.
We've got Hayden Flohr with us here as well. And we've got some stuff to dig into. We also are going to have a couple other people hop on the stage and join us. But if you're watching in now, feel free to chime in, use the comments on the right side as much as you want. We really want this to be kind of an evolving, natural, organic conversation and really want to feed off of some of those insights and stories and experiences that we all have to share. So definitely use that. And then a little bit down the line too, we're going to bring in a couple other speakers that are behind the scenes right now to chime in. We've got some big topics to get into, and I'm excited for it. So thank you guys for being here. I'm Taylor. I'm been the host of this whole SOS cohort throughout the last 6 weeks. We've still got a few left to go. Co-founder of the SOS, a creative collective of creators and entrepreneurs and businesses that are building online. So that's what I've been doing. I've spent the last decade of my life in working in ad agencies, creative production, also working in-house, that's not a word, in-house in marketing and kind of more on like the operations and marketing and sales side of things. So I've seen a lot of it happen over the years, and here I am making my own path as an entrepreneur, as a woman, and that's what we're going to get into. So I'll pass it over to Pia to introduce yourself, and then to Hayden, and then we'll get into it.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here, especially on International Women's Day. Serendipitous is right. I'm Pia. I'm the founder of Collective Studio. It's a coaching and creativity studio, reimagining and realizing new futures. I mean, hey, who doesn't need better days? My background actually is as a creative director and copywriter and strategist, the whole mix, working for creative agencies for I'm going to age myself, well over a decade, let's say that. And I've built a creative studio. So I've worked as a partner. I've judged award shows. I've won some myself. And then recently moved into the path of coaching creators who are feeling stuck and really ready to imagine what might be possible next and build that future. So that's really exciting work, as well as helping on the creative side. So it's great. And it's a journey there's a lot of stories to tell along the way. So I look forward to sharing them all with you. And I'm so excited to be here with Taylor and Hayden and all of you, of course. I just can't see your faces.
Thank you, Pia.
Hi, everyone. Also, Tay, I think it's worth thanking you for putting all of this together, not only, in terms of the community platform, but also putting together this panel. I can see just so many avenues and elements and ways that this is going to be not just inspiring, but actually like a whole entire movement for, all of us gang on the Twitter, on the Twitter train. So thank you for running the show on this and allowing Pia and I to be here. But my name is Hayden. For those of you who don't know me, I am the founder of Coaches Unleashed. I am a business and mindset coach. So I do a lot of work with coaches and creators behind the scenes in terms of selling and building authentic brands and really being heart-centered, heart-led, industry leaders, because ultimately that's what it takes to be kind of, for lack of a better way to say it, at the front of a really saturated industry, because we're kind of living in it right now. So this kind of conversation is right up my alley, and I am very excited to dive in today. So thank you.
I love it. We're going to dive into a couple different things, but to start off, we do have a little bit of, I promise you guys, this isn't going to be like a presentation show and tell, but we did have something prepared just to kind of walk us through some of these conversation points as we're going through it. So to start off, I guess just amongst us here, we talked a lot about, we've been talking about this at length, like we've talked a lot about what success and the definition of success for women is, and how there's very much like a gendered bias around that. So Pia, Hayden, wondered if we could kick it into that by just kind of giving some insight or shedding maybe some experience or background on what is success as a female entrepreneur, creator, builder, business owner, coach. What does that look like?
Take it away, Pia girl. I'll follow you.
On the spot.
It's a good question. It's a big question. And I think it's huge. But I think oftentimes we have a certain collective definition of what success is. And often it's just monetary, right? It's like, oh, when I make this amount of money and I have this amount of whatever it is, material goods, then I'm like successful. Ain't nothing wrong with money. I'm not saying that, but I think something can create issues when it becomes the destination and not really seen as the enabler. So I think I think it's time for us to rewrite what success looks like as individuals and also as women. Like, what does that mean? For me personally, success is freedom. It's living a nice, luscious, juicy, free, open life where I do have a prosperous and successful business. But I have a lot of time and space to do other things that really matter to me. I can make art and create just for the sake of it. I can work in community. I can work on collaborative projects. I can spend time with my husband. I can spend time with my stepkids. I can go see movies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like having the space to have a really integrated life where success isn't just sort of these metrics of, I don't know. Maybe it's also an old capitalist. Is it old? We're still under capitalism. It's old, but old capitalist paradigm where it's like, you're successful when you've achieved these kind of, I don't know. I kind of see like an old school 90s stockbroker trader in my head. Like when you have like these things and then you're successful. And I think that's empty. At least for me, it is. And I think we would benefit from redefining what success looks like. Also, it's not just individual success. We're talking about purpose here. It's like success is a life well lived where you're leaving behind a legacy, right? It's not just about you and what you can get and what you can achieve, about who you help, who you support, what we co-create together, what we leave behind. Success is like, so I'm going to stop talking now because I can probably keep going, but success is really big. Like it's about like, what's fueling your purpose? What are you doing to create a big impact in the world through just how you're living or through what you're doing? And how do we make that even bigger when we're aligned together, redefining what success could be and therefore having a positive impact on people, on planet, and on profit. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be an either or. So that's the shortest version of the answer I think I could give you.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think the success is like a big experiment, right? Because when we enter our businesses, we all come in with this definition of what we think success is. And I think that's why people love entrepreneurship so much, because it forces them, for better or worse, to get back to their roots and to figure out what that actually means to you. So, for any of you here today who are in the position where in your business, you're questioning what success means, you're questioning what it looks like for you and how you want to, kind of step into that authenticity train that, everyone talks about online, but so little people actually live it. It kind of starts with this experimental mode where you have to play with different versions of success and you have to chase different things and you have to fall flat on your face to realize like what's aligned for you and what's not. And I did the same exact thing when I started my business. I haven't nearly been in business for as long as you guys have. So you guys probably are way further than I am. But, year one, when I started business, I was working all day on my business. I was bartending all night long just to, make ends meet. And I loved what I did every single day. But there was this never ending sense of feeling like I was catching up. Like I had all these people and all these things around me. And I'm like, I just have to keep up. And then you get to this point in business where you're like, I'm, excuse my language, fucking tired of keeping up with everyone else. Like, I want to be at the front. I want to do my own thing. Like, I want to be in my market of my own. I want to stop trying to look at other creators or look at other coaches to try to figure out what I'm supposed to do. And that commitment, I think, completely changed my definition of success, because then I realized when I wasn't chasing something all the time, that what I really wanted was to like close my laptop at the end of the day and feel peace, regardless of who did or did not buy, regardless of how my tweets were performing, regardless of all of these other crazy things that can happen outside of me. That's what success looks like to me. And that's not something that is created by money or created by clients or created by necessarily community, but you feeling like that first and being able to create that for yourself first is ultimately what creates those tangible, realities of success. So for me personally, the best way that I can explain that is to say that story to people, because I went from being, for lack of a better way to say it, like very money hungry and inspired by the tangible benefits of business to truly just designing my entire business and my strategy and the way that I lead people around, how do I show up every single day so that when I close my laptop, I just feel good about what I did? Not necessarily how much money came in, not necessarily all the wooey stuff. And that was huge, huge, huge for me. And I see a lot of women also stepping into kind of that same mode of thinking, which is amazing.
Yes.
Powerful, because that's how we end up advocating for each other at the end of the day, right? Like when we're going first and leading, like that's it, you guys. So that's my take on the whole thing. That's how I feel about success.
I love it. So I want to add some things too, because this is like getting my brain buzzing, of course. I love you guys. I love having these conversations. I think that they are so important. And I think that like, I love this graphic first off, just because this is how I think of success for myself now, but it wasn't always, right? Like we're conditioned, we have all of these conditioned beliefs, especially as women, whether they're learned from like society or media or our parents or the people that we spend time with or our professional cohorts, like as high achieving professional women, we strive to check off these different boxes of like what success means. And so much of that is formed by what we're around, what we're brought into. But like we make these decisions out of fear. We quiet our voices, we give away our power, we play down or we play small because we essentially like strip ourselves of who we are so that we can achieve this construct of like success, right? And when you step back and look at it, it's like, how are these things serving me, number one, and like where did this foundation start, I think, and does it achieve these like ideals of being at this intersection of purpose and passion and intuition, and like how I'm moving in that direction and embracing all of these things every day. So that being said, though, there's a lot of, I think, limiting beliefs and hindering beliefs around what not only is stopping us from getting to that next level as women creators, founders, entrepreneurs, but also just in life, in day to day, like from achieving this like full life that we want to live. What does that look like? So I'm going to bring in some of the other ladies that we have here with us. Hey guys. Hey.
Hi.
Hello. So the next question that we have, and if you guys want to, like, when we're going around talking about these, if you guys want to do like a quick intro, who you are. Thank you so much, Nay, Justine, Melina, for being here and joining us today. It's so good to have these conversations. But we're going to talk about some of these like limiting beliefs and hindering beliefs and sort of how they've, brought a lot of women to where they are now, but also have kind of like obstructed and prevented women from getting to that next point in their career professionally or just in their life. So did you guys want to add anything on to this like definition of success as women as we were talking through it?
Yeah, actually, I have something.
Yes.
Let's introduce myself. I'm Nay, the brand strategist, or Naomi. That's my full name. It just sounded better when I put Nay next to the brand strategist. My definition of success is freedom in all elements of the way, because you could have money, but then have no love in your life, or be not in a mental state where you can enjoy it. Or you can have a lot of love in your life, but be homeless, or maybe not homeless, but struggling, sick. You could be sick and have money, but you can't really do much with it. So I think true freedom is having the mental capacity to do what you want and expand in life in the way that you're meant to, without having hindrances or having to answer to anybody. Yeah.
I love that. I love it. Melina, Justine, did you guys want to add anything? We've got another question coming up here soon that I think this is like the meat of it. So I'll slide over to the next one. We're going to talk about disempowering beliefs. Like, what is it that's stopping not just us, but like women overall that are in this space, creatives, entrepreneurs, people, women building businesses, from doing it our way? We're talking about like the prescribed, mentality of success, but what are some of those disempowering beliefs? Like, let's name some of them. Anyone chime in?
I can go first.
Yeah.
I just wrote about it this week. But I think it's so I'll just rephrase who I am. So my name is Melina. I'm Girl in the Verse up on Twitter. I am mostly known for my crypto news weekly updates that are fun and engaging, but I am a content creator. I've been doing this for about 10 years. And I will say, I think one of the biggest like disempowering beliefs is that fear of not looking like another girl on social. I hear that all the time, that fear of comparison, right? That idea that if I don't look like her and I don't sound like her, I can't build a business using, my face, my online social audience, my community. And so I keep repeating it. And, that it's not about comparing. It's really about being true to yourself and knowing that maybe someone out there will relate to your story and will want to jump on your bandwagon, right? And your community and feel a part of what you are doing and staying true to yourself.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
I can add on to that because 100% yes, 100% yes. But I was actually having this conversation a couple weeks ago with an old mentor of mine, and we were talking about just comparison in general in the space for women, right? Because you, Pia, and Tay and I were talking about this too. There is a little bit of a sisterhood wound that we all have, where sometimes no matter how much we want that like feminine collective, that power from the people, power from our ladies,
Mm-hmm.
It's hard because we're also scared of it at the exact same time. And so we were talking about the different types of comparison, and there's like spiral up comparison, and then there's spiral down comparison. And it's so easy in the online space to kind of get sucked into that spiral down, where you look at someone else who's in your space or someone else online who's doing it this way, and you compare yourself to them in pretty hurtful ways that stop you from being like authentic. But then there's also that other flip side of comparison, where you see someone who is at the front and who's going first and who's already kind of stepped into their big, bold authenticity, even if it's polar opposite of you and who you are and the way that you speak and the way that you look. You can feel it like in your body. You're like, yes, like that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm following that. And so there's this really big like leadership component, I think, that all of us have to remember at all times, not only for ourselves, but for the other people in our space that we're looking up to and that we're surrounding ourselves with, because it's so easy to just look at everyone around us and be like, oh, they're doing this, I'm not doing that. Or, they look like this, I don't look like that, so I can't do this. Whereas, when we start stepping to the front of these industries and we start going first and we start following people who are also doing the same, that's when the collective like completely changes. And that's when we start, for lack of a better way to say it without getting too deep, eliminating what it feels like to have that like spiral down comparison just at the forefront of our minds all the time. So that's funny how that conversation kind of overlapped with some other conversations I've had this week. So 100% yes, I can relate.
It also sounds like a social media dilemma. Like oftentimes we just see the wins. You don't see the process or what went behind, or blood, sweat, and tears, or the self-doubt, or the whatever, crying on the kitchen floor, whatever happened along the way. We're not exposed to that. And I think that also creates this kind of strange comparison where it's hard. Like I'm looking at, oh man, look at all these people, what they're doing, because people are sharing their big wins, and yeah, I catch myself. It's just, oh, I'm having a moment, and then I just take a step back. But for me, it's not even a woman, like it's a social media thing for me as well. looks and stuff, I'm not an Instagram hottie, so it doesn't really matter for me, but I get it. So I think I think that's interesting. Yeah, just
I was going to say it goes far beyond social, because as women, and I want to say this without sounding like, we don't cheer each other on, but you just look at guys, right? I look at my boyfriend and his friends, they cheer each other on. They're like bros, they love each other. They just love each other, right? So much. They cheer each other on. If a guy sells his friend's NFT or whatever it is, they don't care. They're like, I'm so happy for you, bro, right? Like, I hear that all the time. But as women, we don't do that. Although we say that we do, we truly don't. It's this idea, and I keep saying it and repeating it. When I was growing up and I saw women on a stage, I thought to myself, well, she took it. I can't be on a stage because she's doing it now. She's representing all of us. But we have to keep reminding ourselves that if she can do it, I can do it too. And it's this constant thing going on in our heads that when we see other women, I want all of us to look at that and say, if she can do it, I can do it too. And I want to cheer her on without feeling like she is my competition.
I'm cheering. And I think what comes up for me as I'm listening to you is, where does that come from? Who does that belief serve?
I think it just goes like generational. Like
I think it also divides women. Like if you have women that are against each other, it's like, I don't want to make it's not a male bashing thing for love men. It's all good. But it's like, who does that serve? So I think this kind of separate and divide. And I don't know. I think it's obviously time to change the narrative, but I'm rooting. This might be reverse discrimination, but I haven't read a book by a man in a really long time. Just because I love hearing, it's just women's voices, like 2 years, novels. I love novels. I'm reading it. So I always feel like I'm supporting, and like, okay, even on Twitter, like, where are my girls at? Where are women? What's happening? What are women writing about? And I feel like there's a bit of a shift happening, at least for me, when I look around. A bit. But I hear you, and definitely eliminate any kind of like competition generally. I feel like it's like a very large plane. It's not a ladder, it's a plane, and like one person is there and one person is there. Like, we're just all in these different spots in this big territory, and it's not something that's like, up or down. No one is like, even Hayden, you mentioned you've had 10 years more in the industry. That doesn't matter. No one has what you have, which is your beautiful experience, whether it's 6 months or 3 years, it doesn't matter. That's yours, So I think it's like, that helps me as a metaphor of just looking at it as like a big territory, and people are in just different countries, just different places. Not ahead, not behind.
You know what I think it is? I was just thinking, I believe that we are the way that we act because we always had to consider ourselves worthy. We weren't born with society and oftentimes culturally in our families being deemed as worthy or capable or able. We were never given that expectation or that ceiling of potential by everyone. When we were born, we had to question, do I belong here because there's no one here like me? Or am I able to do this because no one's done that like who's like me? And even if you look just in how, everything is, it's like we don't belong there in a lot of ways. And there has only just recently space has been made for us. So for all of history, we've been disadvantaged and treated as less than. And now we get to this place where we're supposed to support each other. We're supposed to, feel like we belong when we never did belong. So it's kind of like reversing a forever long.
It's the sisterhood wound, man.
Yeah.
Like, that shit runs deep. It really does. And I think, like, Melina, to your point too, I think that that's a great definition of a hindering or disempowering belief of like this inherent back of mind competition. If she's doing it, I can't do it. Like there's only enough space for one. And I think that whether it's, nobody who's done it like me, whether that it's a tendency to constantly search for or need validation or people pleasing, or maintaining some semblance of self-worth in the wrong types of relationships, having like sorry, I've been thinking about a list of like, what are my disempowering beliefs? I have many. Like, what am I doing to feel more valued? Is it just for that, like, quick validation, or is it something that's bigger within my foundation of like what I see as successful, like how I want to live my life? There's just so many of them that creep into our everyday like mentality and thought process to a point like where we don't even realize it's happening. Like in the conversations that we have with men, like I think I was just explaining this to you, Pia and Hayden, like this week, of like I consciously shift the way that I have conversations with like male clients versus female clients. Like there's a different tonality there. There's a different way of going about it. And I know that that's like in itself just internalized misogyny, internalized like limited beliefs that I have for myself. But no, yeah, I wanted to add those two cents.
I wanted to just say one quick thing. The one thing I noticed about myself was that every time I saw another woman walk down the street and she was carrying a beautiful bag or she was dressed to the nines, and I wanted to tell her, you look good, but I never did. And that's another thing that I have to mentally remind myself to tell women that they look good, that I like what she's wearing, that I like what she's doing. And I think it's part of again, I don't know what it is to answer to Pia. I don't know why I grew up thinking this, but I didn't grow up learning and telling other women that, wow, you did a great job today. That's why I keep going back to when I see guys doing it just so naturally, instinctively, I always have to remind myself, hey, I can tell her that she looks good. It has nothing to do with me. But I don't know if any of you can relate to that too. Like when you see another girl, do you automatically go up to her and say, you look good? I don't think that we do. But that could just be
I do sometimes.
Yeah,
Like at first, it's embarrassing maybe for the person. They're like, "What?" But I'm just like, "I really like your hair. I don't know what you really, or whatever it might." The thing that I'm trying to actually do with I call them little people, like with my stepdaughter, for example, is not to just compliment, like to say like how she looks. So I'm like, that was really clever, or that was really well, you're so creative, or you're, so even with women on the street, that's the only thing that stops me sometimes is like, oh, I wish I could say something that I knew more about her, just not her looks, right? Like I will compliment her looks anyway, but to say something value the other parts of her that have nothing to do with what she looks like. So anyway, I'm just throwing that in because it was interesting when I went to, very quick story. I live in Copenhagen, Denmark. I'm originally from New York City and Montreal. And my dad lives in Arizona, a little confusing, but I went to visit my dad in Arizona and I was going to buy my stepdaughter something, clothes. And I was so surprised that it was just like, I'm beautiful. I'm a princess. It was just like pink, princess, pink. And I was just like, I want to buy her a NASA shirt. Like,
Yeah.
I want to get her something else, and I was really surprised. Like it starts there. Like already you're being told like, your value is, you're cute. So anyway, that was running off on a tangent there, but just to say, yeah, we should celebrate each other more. And I would love, before this call ends, like what are ways that we can redefine that together? Like what would that look like? Healing the sister wound and supporting each other, and what does it look like when we do it together?
I can totally I have something to add on because I think Nay's point and Melina's point actually go together really well. Women have just been taught their whole entire lives to protect their space and to be protective of their space. So there's like this invisible guard up all the time. And as a woman in a female space who is much like Melina, like I want so badly to have more relationships with women, especially online. But we also have to take ourselves out of the picture and understand that if we have our walls up sometimes and we're scared to go out there and compliment a woman for fear of how it looks or fear of being uncomfortable or making them uncomfortable, they also have those same walls in some capacity. So we're all in this collective kind of dealing with these walls. And if we're so used to protecting our peace, it can be super triggering for like, you know, trying to figure out how to approach women or try to figure out how to be supportive of women. Even if that's what we really want, there's a much deeper dynamic going on there. So I totally hear the both of you, and I can feel and resonate with both of those. And this is such a deep conversation, because we could get into like masculine and feminine energetics and how triggering they are for certain people, depending on how you were raised, what, you know, how the people around you operated. But I see a lot of that in the business space too, where female entrepreneurs are like, can I show up and be the masculine, analytical me online and still have a super connected relationship with women? Because most often that's not the case. Same with being like super feminine and flowy, right? If those guards are up and we show up and we're super feminine and flowy and in the mind and in the body, and we're trying to relate to someone who's never had that in their life before and was raised by men, or just has, you know, is very right-brained and very analytical, they cannot relate to that. It's super triggering for them. So I think there's just also an awareness that we have to have about the collective and what we all have experienced individually to create kind of a bigger understanding of why we are the way that we are, so we eventually can come back together. And that's done kind of on an individual level, where we, like I said at the beginning, we lead first, and then everyone kind of is empowered by that and steps into it. So it's such a deep conversation, and I love this, but I think that there's just such a bigger understanding that we could have about why we are the way that we are, so that we can ultimately all come together. So I think this conversation is amazing, but I just wanted to add that little bridge there.
Yeah.
That was
And
a
I
really
think when it
go ahead.
when it comes to like, you know, these like hindering beliefs that many of us have, I think it's worth acknowledging that exactly that. It's worth acknowledging them. It's not something where you get over it and you just let these beliefs go overnight. Like that, unless you're a robot, like that just doesn't happen. So, you know, I think it's about getting to the root and the heart of some of those challenges, and then truly like challenging them. It's about creating new patterns of like how you speak to yourself, how you speak to other women, how you communicate and collaborate with women, how, you know, you personally like address the sort of internal narrative or the dialogue that's already holding you back with those beliefs. Like, I think that's part of it. So when your relationship to these beliefs change, that is the first step, I think, in my experience, towards freedom. Like, ask yourself, why? What is it that's holding you back? But then also like the why, like get to the heart of that problem. And you can start to transform that relationship and then like consciously move through, you know, your interactions with other women with that kind of as a foundation. But on that note, like, how do we challenge these beliefs, right? Like, we all have them. Like, how do we, is it talking to ourselves? Is it like, is it going to therapy? Is it making conscious efforts to just be more supportive and engaged and, you know,
I think it's
all of it?
yeah, I think it's a mixture of all those things. I think different things work for different people, right? So for me, it's taking action and just like doing the thing I'm scared of, you know, and then I realized, oh, it's not as scary as I thought it was. It's like way scarier before you do it, and then you do it and you're like, oh, this is nothing, and then you keep doing it. So I think that's personally, that's the best way to challenge, is just to do the thing and prove yourself wrong. And then, yeah, you know, getting help from someone who's, you know, gone through whatever process to understand the underlying beliefs, to help pull stuff out of you that you might not sit down and find on your own. Because yeah, there's so many things just, you know, sitting in the sediment beneath the surface, and you'd be surprised if you just sat down with someone and kind of like had a deeper conversation and explored the why, what you'd find. And, you know, then that also helps you to take action, because then you realize, oh, that voice in my head, it has nothing to do with me. It's not me. It's someone else's voice, or it's like a collection of amalgamation of all the other voices, you know, from my past that are telling me not to do this thing, or telling me that I can't do this thing. And then when you separate that voice from yourself, then it becomes easier to take the action. And then taking the action then further reinforces that, oh, it has nothing to do with that, whatever that voice is saying. So yeah.
I think the first thing, I think the first thing is, asking yourself why. But I also think we have to understand that we are comfortable where we are, and we, as women especially, benefit where we are as much as it puts us at a disadvantage. And I mean that in a sense, like, this is all we've known, and a lot of women have been able to thrive more or less. Like, I use that very loosely. So the incentive to change means abandoning our acceptance of what has worked, maybe to our disadvantage, of course, but it also means going against the grain and, being a contradiction to everything that has, got you here. So when we ask ourselves why and to change those beliefs, we're basically denouncing, in a lot of ways, the patriarchy. We're denouncing societal expectations. We're denouncing the systems that have been set up for us. We're denouncing, our families, the way we've been raised, our friends. So when we ask yourself why, I think it's like, why do you want to do that? Because for a lot of people, we always talk about, like, oh, we want to make change, we want to do this and that. But I don't think a lot of people want to change because we're comfortable here. As much as we may not benefit the most from being here, there is a benefit, and a lot of that benefit is being comfortable. And we've become so literate in maneuvering in this constricted space that there's not much incentive to want to challenge these beliefs, because you can challenge your belief and still hold them. You can contradict them and still keep them because they're comfortable for you. And I think if you want to challenge, and not just challenge, but to change those beliefs, I think you have to give yourself a why. Like, why you are the way you are and why this isn't effective, and have a vision for where you're going. Because at least, let's say for me, a lot of what I was challenging were cultural and religious beliefs that I used to hold. And although it may have been comfortable, it was convenient for me to stay there. And for a long time, it very much was. But again, it's like a sacrifice almost, because when you truly challenge those beliefs, like the truest ones, the ones that keep us here and accepted and safe, and that's convenient for us, you're basically almost in a lot of ways sacrificing everything that you were and raised to be.
What I'm hearing you say is you're also speaking to like a grieving process, like when you're grieving the death of a part of you in a way, and that's hard, and then you're sort of welcoming, there's a rebirth, there's a new part that's emerging,
Right.
and that's can be a painful process, for sure. And the other thing that, as I'm listening to you, I'm reminded of what you said earlier, which is freedom was your definition of success. And so that came back to me, because like, how do we challenge these beliefs? We have to have a why. Well, if they're disempowering and restrictive, then we're not really free.
Right.
So that's a good why. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to choose the beliefs that free me or that free us. And I think for me, what motivates me a lot is the us, like when it's not just about me, like, yeah, it is about me, but it's also about me in relation to others, to other women. And so, yeah, but you're right about comfort. I'm just riffing on you because you made me think a lot. So thank you for sharing. So it's really, really good feedback, but I'm just thinking about it. So I think first is recognizing that we had naming the belief. Oh, this shit's here. Like just being aware, like this is a belief that I'm holding. Oh, and then asking, like, is it serving me? No. Okay. How might it be and how might it not be? And like, because sometimes the belief must serve you in some way. Otherwise you wouldn't hold it.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's serving you in the right way. And maybe it's not serving your ultimate why, as you mentioned, Nay. So it's like naming it, asking, like, is it serving me? And is it serving me the way I need it to be served? And is it mine? That's another big one for me. Does it belong to me? Did I inherit it? Because a lot of my beliefs are not mine. I don't even realize it's not mine. I inherited it from the society we live in, from my family, from whoever. I'm like, hey, is that mine? Oh, no, it's not mine. And even if it's not mine, do I want to make it mine? That's another thing, man. They're not all wrong. Maybe there's a belief that I'll take that. And what's the one I don't? No. That's okay. I'm going to leave that one behind. And what belief do I want to hold? And lastly, I think there's I've read this from another wonderful female creator named Nova Richards on Twitter. And she talked about bridge affirmations. And I thought it was very powerful because it's like, it's not saying like, I believe that women are cheering for me and rooting for me, whatever the new belief is. It's like I am open to believing that women are all cheering and rooting for me. So it's like, how do you sort of create the bridge to this new belief or this new way of thinking? So that would be like a process that I would identify in terms of how to challenge it. Well, first you have to acknowledge it's there, and then is it yours? Is it something you want to keep? How is it serving you? And then how can I create a bridge to a new belief I want to hold? Because otherwise there's a vacuum.
Yeah.
I
There's
think
also-
that's so important. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Hey.
Oh, you sure? I was just going to say there's two types of challenging too. There's mental and emotional challenging, quote unquote, that we do with beliefs. And then there's physical challenging too. And I'm sure you guys have all heard the quote, like something along the lines of, you can't read the label from inside the bottle, or you can't see the picture from inside the frame. We get stuck as women because we're very cerebral, right? We love to think about things. We love to understand why. And that can also be, for as empowering as it is when it's paired with the components of physically challenging beliefs, it can be just as detrimental to solely only be challenging things mentally, because we don't actually go and do it. We don't actually integrate that change in embodiment. So I do this work a lot with clients because kind of my secret sauce is being able to blend like the spiritual and the practical, like not be so woo all the time, but not be so like in your face hustle masculine. And sometimes the answer is a little tough love that says, I see this belief. I don't know where it's coming from yet. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why it's mine to hold right now, but I'm going to physically challenge this first by moving differently, because what that does is it actually gives you something to compare it to. You have this cerebral emotional experience that we're trying to process, but we don't have any sort of challenge to create a new situation with which we can compare it to. So sometimes as women, when we feel like we're stuck in this kind of like a vortex is the best way to explain it, of thinking and trying to figure it out or trying to heal and process, it really needs to be paired with kind of this tough love element of, I'm going to move differently first so that I can reverse engineer understanding what the fuck is going on here, you know? So I would say it's also so empowering to do both of them at the exact same time. We're not always going to have the mental and the cerebral and the emotional answers first, even though we want them so badly. Sometimes we just have to look at this challenge and be like, I can see this issue in my life. It is not serving me. I don't know why it's here, but this is how I currently move. And this is how I currently approach this. I'm going to try it this way first so that I have something to compare it to, and I can learn and I can move and I can lead. And so I think that's so powerful, and it's done a lot for me in being able to kind of stand out in my industry. But I also know it could just serve so many other people too, because it's just so easy to like get stuck in this process of like, why, where does this come from? How do I change it, to the point where we kind of lose sight of actually how to do those things. Right. So
Yeah, I agree. A funny thing is that as much as we, it's kind of similar to what I was saying before, but as much as we question our beliefs and, want to take action on it, it's almost like we're so blind to it in a lot of ways. And I think even before we can challenge those beliefs and take those actions, like Hayden said, because I do that too. It's a really good way to like, at least get the ball rolling. But at least from my experience with myself and then the people I've worked with and my clients, the biggest issue is like blindness to their own beliefs. I think there's a level of acceptance that you have to allow yourself to get to even think to challenge them. Because I believe it all goes back to, how it served you. Like, I forgot who said it, but they, those beliefs you had, it served you. Otherwise you wouldn't have had it. Right. And I think a belief that a lot of us have is that the beliefs that are harming us are good. But then you're complaining about an outcome based on those beliefs. And then you see the negative belief that's harming you, but then we are blind to the belief that says, this is good. I like this. I want this. I don't want to change. And then we get in this cycle of trying to change our minds and doing things. But the true core belief, the root of the belief is that this is good. This is all that's for me. This is the best that I can do. That type of belief, the core belief.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
that speaks to intuition as well, though, because it's again, it's not an either or. It's cerebral, it's embodiment, it's we process in different ways to become more self-aware, because that's what we're talking about really, is self-awareness, right? So I think there's also intuition, and sometimes it might not be formulated in words. It might not sound logical at all. It might just be a feeling in your chest or in your gut, you know? And that's a guide. That's a hit. That's a data point that just gets disregarded often, because where's the science, or, you know, it's felt. And I think that's another way of, and now I'm talking about self-awareness, but it's another way of being aware of what good feels like. So you're saying, May, you know, or how we want to move differently. What you were saying, Hayden. There's might be an intuitive hit when you're moving in a way that just feels yummy, and you're like, oh, more of that. So anyway, I think it's holistic.
Yes.
Awareness.
So I'm gonna put this on the next slide, because I want to talk about like supported and, you know, building like advocacy and support, and not just building it, but like living it out every day, not just one day a year. I think that as women, like this kind of triggered a thought in my mind of what we were talking about. Like, women were never taught how to have it all without having to do it all. Like, I am always the first person in my family, in my professional spheres, where I'm like, okay, if I need to get something done, like, I already know that that's going to be hours and hours and hours of work or dedication or commitment that's on me. Like, I can talk about it. I can tell my husband I need this and this and this done. But I know at the end of the day, like, a lot of that stuff is going to come down to me. But I think that that's also in itself a limiting belief. And being able to be vulnerable and have a space with other women, for me, has been the biggest eye opener to what are some of those beliefs. Like, how can we move differently by having this, like, these vulnerable conversations, just like we're having right now? How can we have it all without having to do it all? And breaking down those barriers is definitely something that I am full force ahead on. I'm in the journey right now, you guys. But let's talk about it. Like, as a female founder, creator, entrepreneur, what makes you guys feel supported? What makes you feel advocated for?
I can say personally, an element I think that lies underneath this is having this experimental mindset. I think it's pretty safe to say that all of us are, as women, are traversing waters that not only we have never, you know, been able to traverse, but also as a collective, we've never been able, or we haven't up until this point, you know, obviously gone through what we're going through. And I think for me, having this experimental mindset where I'm able to hold space for myself, but also hold space for other people and what they're going through. And maybe that's the coach in me, maybe that's the self-awareness who understands, you know, what I'm going through and is able to process that, but also see what other people are going through. I think we need to be very aware of how we're responding to the women around us and processing what happens inside of the collective, and not just writing things off or saying that we need to be different or being more supportive. I think it goes deeper than just wanting those things. It you know, comes down to this conversation of understanding, like, why are some women the way they are? Like, why are some women turned off by the feminine flowy? Why are some women turned off by the super masculine? It's okay for us to hold space for all those people. It's okay for us. And if someone is turned off by you and your vibe and your brand and the way that you speak or the way that you write content, that is okay. It doesn't mean anything about us personally. And I think that's big for us as leaders, is knowing that when we're in our power, like, not everything's about us, but not everything's personal. Not everything's about us. So being able to hold that space for yourself and for other people not only takes that pressure off of how we think we need to show up, but also these unspoken expectations about how we think that others also need to show up to support us. So, you know, for me, I'm big, like, leadership is part of my brand. For me, that looks like just going first and holding this space for myself and for other women, and truly trying to understand what's going on behind the scenes, because it probably has nothing to do with me, and it probably has nothing really to do with them. But once we can understand that, we can change the way we speak, we can change the way we show up, We can change the way we hold space and or, you know, get attached to the people that we're comparing ourselves to, all that kind of, you know, other stuff that comes along with it. So, you know, Pia said it best earlier. We're talking about self-awareness here. It really does just come down to the self-awareness and then how we show up to meet that self-awareness and not just internalize it or put a label on it, or, you know what I mean? So that's what that means for me personally.
I would say the same. I think the best way for me to feel supported is to watch people lead and go first, like Hayden said. The most support I've felt have been watching people in a similar space as me, being authentic and being their, living out their purpose and doing what works for them and not trying to be like somebody else, because then I feel more comfortable to do that for myself. And it gives me inspiration and the push to be like, you know what? If you want to get anywhere where they are, you're going to have to do this. And if you want to support other people the way that they've supported you from afar, I'm going to have to be who I am.
Love that.
I think the biggest gift you can give anyone is the safety and freedom just to show up as they are, and the comfort, just as you are, having a shit day, that's all right. Like, as you are, having a good day, that's all right. As you're like not having to perform, not having to be a certain way. And I think when we can create these spaces where together we can just show up as we are, like feeling authentically now who we are, what we're building as creators, as females, as sisters, as all the things, the roles, and just who we are, it feels very supportive. It feels very, for lack of a better word, honest, sincere. There's the word. It feels sincere. And so we can hold space for one another in all our different modalities, shapes, shades, all of it, flavors, and kind of root for each other, even if, hey, not everyone's going to be for everybody else. That's all right. That's a good sign. You're not going to be for everybody, and no, not everybody's going to be for you. But that doesn't mean we can't support each other and we can't hold space for that person, even if they're not for us. So it's like, I don't know, community makes me feel supported. Community like this, conversations like this right now, seeing other women doing it their own way, doing it a different way, challenging the way it should be done. All of it. That makes me feel like I'm in community.
Love it. What makes me feel supported is when I see a Twitter bro do a thread that actually mentions some women in it and not just all dudes. I'm like, okay, I see you. I get it. No. But that's what it is, man. It's being conscious of the fact that we are all out here trying to do the work, trying to have, these conversations, trying to uplift and support each other. But I think it's also like consciously being attuned to those sort of the subtext, and not to, again, say like, oh, this is women's responsibility, but like, as women doing this is part of, I think, what we have to recognize also in nourishing these relationships with other women, is like looking at the kind of the nuances of it. Like, okay, is Pia tweeting something from a place of fear? No. Or like, is there something deeper here? Like, how can I help uplift this a little bit? Or like, if I have a female friend or, like a colleague come to me with something, like, is there a way that I can uplift this conversation or bring more light to this or shed more insight on it in a way that goes just beyond like the immediate too? Because I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah. And I'll add on to that. What makes me feel supported is women who hold me to a higher standard too. I think that I'm very much a tough love gal. It's the way that I lead. It's the way that I've been led. It's what resonates the most. And there is this element of being able to support people from a really high place and a really loving place at that, without enabling them too. Like, there are good ways to say, I hear you and I feel you, but show the fuck up. Like, let's do it differently. Like, let's be bigger than what we're all currently experiencing. And that, to me, like, I just got goosebumps. That's powerful to me, because I know so many of you who are doing that, and it's hard and it's uncomfortable and it feels scary, but that that's it, you guys. So I think that like groups like this are so empowering for us because it's high level people with, and I think it's easy to forget too, we all struggle with the same thing in different capacities and in different lights. And that's so easy to forget sometimes. So being able to be in spaces like this and look at all of you and be like, yeah, we really do all go through the exact same things, but we forget it sometimes because we're all just doing our own thing and trying to make it in life. But looking at other people who are also working on the same things that are saying, yeah, show up. Like, I know it's hard and I feel you and I'm going to be here to pick you up off the ground when it sucks. But like, we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the collective. We owe it to everyone else who's following us to show up. And so today, ultimately, like, that's my huge takeaway, is being able to look at all of you and go, yeah, there's a group of girls here who are truly holding each other to a higher standard, but doing it in the most compassionate, heart-centered, but also like leadership-centered way. And I love that. I think Twitter in general just needs so much more of that. So much more.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
I have a question actually, because I think that's really interesting. I saw, how do we also hold others up to standard? Like let's say, okay, I'll give you an example. There's someone, a man, he's great. He's on Instagram. He was listed as one of the top best entrepreneurs in like in some journal or something. And the journalist was a woman who wrote it, because I read top 10 men. Really? There's not one woman. Actually, there's not one woman.
Not one girl. Yeah.
There's not one, and there's no place to comment, because I would have. And then I didn't want to like dull this person's shine, because he was really proud of it and sharing, oh, I got listed. And I'm not about, why isn't there one woman? But like, there's a part of me like, oh shit, how do I? And the same thing happened when Justine and I did this course, great course, fantastic. But then there's like a list of all like influencers, top whatever, and it's like, man, you can't get, maybe it's me one influential woman, like, and it's like, so how do you enter that dialogue in a way that doesn't get someone's back up or hair up or whatever the expression is? Like, I find it challenging. I'm just gonna be honest, because I don't know, like, how do I come in? Where do I come in? How can I say it in a way that's heard, and that it doesn't get, what am I afraid of? I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to seem like that person. Doesn't that sound horrible? Like, I don't want to seem like that person that's gonna like that kind of.
Yeah. That right there is something that.
I guess one thing that just came to mind is that, like, okay, if maybe someone made a list of all these, top male creators, and they didn't think to include women, maybe you could have just made your own list with all, the women you want to highlight. I don't know. That just came to mind.
No, it's good, but I'm not a journalist. This woman had a whole, like, I wouldn't have her reach, and I totally 100% with that. Which is,
and then maybe Twitter, just.
That's a good idea.
I was going to say, Pia, I'll reverse that to you, because I've been interviewing women for the whole month, from the month of March. And I keep asking them, how do you feel being a woman in this space? And then, like, I get goosebumps and my hair lifts up too, because I'm like, I hate that we have to ask ourselves that question,
Yes.
But in a way that, I also want to hear from women who tell me, well, listen, there's not a lot of women here. But how do we go past that conversation? And I'll take it a step further. I am a content creator in the space. And I can tell you, this past year, I think what's allowing me to feel supported is allowing myself to say no. Because I don't want to get the gig because I'm a woman, because they just want to, we filled in that circle. Okay. Woman here. We got a girl, so I'm allowing myself to feel supported internally by saying no to things when I notice right away I'm the token.
You know what I found interesting? It was when Pia was saying, I don't want to sound basically nagging.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting, because isn't that so common when women start to advocate for themselves against the established, norm, which is male-centered and favored, where we feel like we're nagging to be represented. And it makes me wonder, it's just like, because I don't know how, I don't really have an answer, but it just makes me think, like, what are we wanting? Like, are we vying for the not admiration, but just to be seen by men? Or do we want to be put on the same pedestal as men? Like, are we looking to be considered in the rooms? Because I think that's really what it is, to be considered. But at the same time, what does that mean? Is the mindset that these men are coming from going to be like, oh, it's just we don't think of women because they're women, you know?
It's representation and it's fairness, and representation matters. So it's like, you know, other people are seeing this. So how can we start to change the narrative? Like, how can we start to change I don't know if it's a narrative. I don't know if it's the optics. If it's like, this is still happening where it's like the top 10 are still all men.
But it doesn't benefit men though to do anything different. That's what I'm saying. Because we're asking men to do something that doesn't benefit them. And then we're frustrated. And it's like, why wouldn't men do something that wouldn't benefit them?
So how do we go about advocating?
Look, I'll take it a step further. I don't know about you women, but when I see for the month of March on any magazine right now is when they applaud women, any girl magazine. But then I would love for the month of April to also have a woman or a Black woman, right? Like, why does it only take this month? That's what bothers me too. It's just like today on Twitter. And look, I'll be honest, I'm very grateful. People are tagging me in all these tweets, right? Like, tag your favorite women. But I also am like, why only today? Why aren't we tagging each other every other day? So it's like, I'm going like beyond Pia's question, but because I'm also here, like, I want to be that person to keep writing and tweeting like, hey, you forgot about the women. But then I also don't want it to be, well, let's just talk about women because now it makes sense too.
Yeah, because that's the problem. That's the fruit of the issue. It's not the root of it. And I think we're attacking it at the fruit of it. And I think the easiest way is just to cut the dead fruit, but the tree is still bad.
Yeah.
You know? So
how do we?
Like, I don't know.
That's the I mean it sincerely. I'm getting really curious. Like, how do we uproot this tree? Everyone get your gardening gloves on.
Chop that shit down.
Together,
it's similar with it's very similar to, as at least being a Black woman. You know, we ask the same thing. It's just like, you know, we're begging for this, but the whole thing is bad. You know, and I think it will have to take a joint effort. You know, there's both people, at least biologically genders on the earth, right? One is going to have to decide that they value us too, or we just go off on our own and create our own thing. But at the same time, we're going to be creating it within the structures of a man's world. So then, like, what's the answer? You know what I mean?
I think the answer lies in experimentation. Like, there is no answer. We just have to figure it out, try and see what sticks. But I'm really curious about what Melina said about, you know, not wanting, like, if you're the token, you don't want to take those opportunities.
I don't.
I get that.
I really choose not
if that wasn't clear, now it is.
I mean, the reality is, you know, I do content. Yes, I'm a girl, but it's beyond being a girl, right?
Yes.
Like, and so it's, you know, it's nice. Oh, great. You want to, you know, you're approaching me because I'm a girl, but I want the conversation to be beyond being a girl, or I don't want to be, you know, part of an organization or company or whatever it is, a project, just because they see me as a girl.
Yeah,
it's like, well, can you see the work that I'm doing as well?
Yeah, I get that. And the only question I was going to ask is, like, if you did take the opportunity, couldn't you just like redirect the conversation and still take advantage of whatever opportunity
But see, and that's where my mind goes. Am I going to take an advantage because I'm a girl in this heavy bro space? Which, I mean, I could, but sometimes feel like more power to me to be like, I'm gonna do this in-house. I'm gonna build my own thing. I'm gonna do my own thing, and you know, just say no. Which now I feel like is much more powerful. You know, like I rather say no. Or like, you know, like we've seen so many of these, you know, I've seen so many girls in this space, right? Like do other spaces from like these other guys who potentially have left the space now, but they were like feeding off of, you know, this guy's space, and they were doing their women version of that space. And I'm like, why are we doing women versions? Let's just have one version.
Yes.
You know, like
I would love to live in a future where you don't have to be scrolling Twitter and see like a 10 women entrepreneurs to follow. It should just be 10 entrepreneurs to follow.
Exactly.
And there's half of them happen to be women because they're, you know, they have their credibility based on their skill and their experience and what they actually bring to the table, or the table that they've created for themselves. Like,
And
I
see that
that's one of those double-edged swords for me. Like, I'll see
Yeah.
them and I support them, and I love that type of content. I love having spaces, especially like safe spaces for women, because I think that is so paramount and so important for, you know, a gender that has essentially been disenfranchised for most of our existence until the last several decades. But even then, like, I would love to see a future where there is parity across the board, and, you know, that doesn't, being a woman in business doesn't have to be the sole definition.
I just read a book, not just, but months ago, I read a book called The Secret Thoughts of Highly Successful Women. I recommend it to everybody, but it's about imposter syndrome, by the way. And in it, she talked about the difference between women and men. Men, when they approach a situation that they're not qualified for, they would say, they ask them, "Are you qualified to do this?" They'll be like, "Yes." But in the back of their minds, they're like, "I don't know how the hell to do this, but I'm gonna figure it out. I'm not going to disqualify myself if I'm given the opportunity." But women, we have this sense of moral obligation and hierarchy to be like, "Well, I don't want to lie," or "This is not, you know." And another point in the book she brought up was like, women are more likely to follow the rules. So a lot of men, they might bend the rules a little bit. They try to see how close they can get to touching the line without getting caught or getting punished for it. But women, you know, we're the moral hierarchies. We're the one who keeps the law, so we stay very far from it. And I think those 2 points is another reason why women aren't advocated for in the way that we should, because I don't think we know how to. I don't think we believe that we're qualified to. And I also think we are so modest because that's what's expected of us and what's been taught to us. Because who's writing these lists? You know, are they men? Then how can we get more women to feel more empowered to get in those positions of influence? Like, women, we always step back when it comes to influence. And when there's a man in the room, we tend to just fall back and let the man lead, despite how incompetent they are. It's just the presence of a man makes us feel like they're more competent than we are. But if we can get to a place where we can see the value in ourselves as women and not just being second to man, but we have our own power and gifts that's nature to us, then I think maybe we can live in a world, like Tay was saying, that, you know, it's more balanced in a lot of ways. Yeah.
I also see, and this is just what's coming up for me, because I think we could sit down for hours and talk about this differently, because I actually think it's a conversation that needs to be had, because something that I see, humans are innately stubborn, right? And the second that you tell them to do something differently, or, you know, do it my way, or you need to start doing this, they're going to pull back and they're going to do the opposite of whatever you say. So I see so often on Twitter, you know, where we girl gang up and we're like, "Hey, where are the fucking women here?" And everyone's like got their pitchforks out and they run away and nothing changes. And so I think there's a conversation there about, if we're leading, how do we approach those conversations differently? How do we ask different questions? How do we step into our power instead of constantly being one step behind them, saying like, you know, try to keep up with it. You know what I mean? Because that's what it feels like sometimes. Like, we're almost chasing our tails, like wondering why. Whereas, how can we lead the conversation differently? How can we, for lack of a better way to say it, like kind of trick the human brain into moving differently? Because I just sometimes feel like the more that we berate people, the further away we get from where we're trying to go. So I think, you know, if we want, there's just a different way. And I don't have the answers to that. I think a collective like this is such a cool space to be able to ask those questions and approach things differently. But I look at it from a leadership perspective. And sometimes it feels to me like when I see those tweets and those threads, and my gut urge is to be like, what the fuck, you know? Doing anything. Like, I've had so many times where I'm like, I'm going to sound nitpicky. I'm going to sound like uber, you know, feminist, and everyone's going to be anti-shutdown. You know what I mean? And then I'm like, where am I actually getting with where I'm trying to go? So again, I don't have the answers, but I do think it's up to a group like this to be like, we're taking the initiative to approach this differently and not just trying to hammer the narrative itself. Like, if we can just lead differently, and maybe we're able to eliminate some of those conversations and those habits that these men and women fall into online, just by showing up and doing things a little bit differently, by not triggering their fight or flight. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes total sense. What I'm hearing you say is moving from a reaction to to being proactive, right? So it's not trying to react to what's going on and all this, but actually proactively saying we're going to do it differently. We're not even gonna. We're planting a new tree here. we're not about that tree. We're planting a new tree, and that would be for like the next time if you all want to meet again. I'd love to explore how do we want to build differently as female creators. Like what does that look like, and and it will look like many different things. There's not like one way, but just to get really curious, because I think it's so important to forge that new path. To find that new way so that we become more proactive. And it's like that stuff. Yeah, that's too bad, but we don't even need to worry about that anymore because we're over here.
Yeah.
Yes.
To add to that, I wanted to say that I think there's safety in numbers, and I think we model what we see. So, I grew up on a small island. I'm from Jamaica originally, and I had a very narrow view of what I wanted to be in life because that's just all I saw. I didn't see anything else other than doctor, lawyer, that kind of thing. And it wasn't until I moved to Canada and I just saw like so many different roles and different opportunities and people doing things that I was like, oh, I can do it. So like sometimes you just need to see it. And so, if there are groups of women coming together and building their own table and doing things differently, I think that alone helps a lot. That helped me. And there was one other point and I can't remember now, but I think that will help a lot to create a safe space for women to also step up, because I've heard a lot about what Nay said from that book. And I've seen it myself just working in like a corporate environment, to get women to apply for promotions and to even apply for the role. It's just like they really just never think they're ready. They're so scared. And as someone who's never really suffered from that in corporate, outside of corporate and trying to create my own thing, I have suffered from that. But I think they just need to see. And once they see other women doing stuff and challenging and taking, uncomfortable action and steps, then they're like, oh, I can do it. And then maybe they still might not do it, but they might, if they're coached and, they're around women taking those steps, then they seek help to be able to take those steps as well. And so, yeah, I think to me, that's kind of like what needs to happen, just coming together because there's strength in numbers and just, laying it all out there, the good, the bad, the ups, the downs, and showing exactly how we're going to create this thing.
Love it.
Yeah. And normalizing it too. Like how often do women come into power? And I love it, but how often does it become like a vendetta? Like I'm here, I deserve this. Look at me. I'm a woman. You know what I mean? Like let's rise up and own the fact that we own this space. It doesn't have to be like this conversation about, it doesn't have to be a conversation. It can just be like, I fucking deserve this. End of story. I'm going to step in and I'm going to normalize this and I'm going to own it. Like that's it. So I think a lot of it too, just like Justine said, it's like showing up and normalizing it so that other people see that it doesn't have to be this scary paradigm shifting thing. Like it can come into play whenever we want it to. I love that a lot. I love it a lot.
Yeah. And I also like what Melina said, going back to when you said you don't want to be that token. And I really do love that because so many times I feel like women are striving for, and we were having this discussion, but I've seen women striving for what the men have, in all different settings, corporate, outside of corporate, and just, how can you encourage women if you're also not striving for what the men want? And I'm like, no, you don't get it. Like, why is that the only thing? Like, can't we want something different? And like just creating our own table. That means a lot to me, seeing women going out and just doing something different and not just trying to get a seat at the man's table or get a seat at insert label hair table. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Creating a table and showing women or, you know, this kind of person how to do something differently is also, I think, really, really
Yeah,
important.
that's such a good point because I deal with that when I work with brands where they use their competitors as a ceiling of their potential, and it's all about beating them. And I think we as women do that a lot, where it's the highest people in the world are all men. So then that's all we know to aspire to, meaning that we are letting these men who more often than not lack character and integrity be the ceiling to our potential and everything we aspired for. And the way that they got there or how they got there or how they just are wired to get there is so different than us. And I that always puts us at a disadvantage because how are we going to win a race that was designed for them? You know?
Yes. And I think having these conversations with men and challenging these masculine ideas and constructs that have been part of our lives and women's lives across ancient history, like we've always built in a man's world. So if we're building a woman's world, we should bring men in to experience that
Yes.
so that they can be so that they can be there instead of and we create this like the feminine, the soft space that makes traditionally and like many constructs like men feel uncomfortable to talk about these topics. But like let's get to the heart of that. Let's have men come into these conversations and get down to like the most vulnerable level of it, because I think that in itself is supportive and uplifting, and that's what that's
Yeah,
just the society we live in.
they could benefit from that too, I think.
I feel like, and I'm just going to throw this in. I feel like there's like a meta conversation as well, because there's a systemic conversation around like capitalism and, you know, like the
Oh my
roots
God,
of
yeah.
capitalism generally, who is this designed for, who profits, who doesn't. And yes, it has been designed mostly by men. Is it working for the planet? No. You know, is it working for people? You know, is it working for profit? Yeah, sure. But at what cost? Right. So it just feels like, I don't know, I'm just bringing it into the room, into the space, because it's been in the back. It feels like it's around me
Yes.
as a big question. Like, I think there are bigger systemic issues that are also at play that are also calling for a redesign.
Absolutely.
And that require more integration, that require more feminine power flow. I don't want to use the word balance, but more like an integration that requires a new way of leading, a new way of living, a new socioeconomic system. Anyone got one? No, I'm just kidding. It's like, so yeah, just to throw that in, and obviously way too big to solve it, or not that it's solved period, but I think it's just an important perspective to also bring into the room.
I actually disagree with Tay and Justine a little bit about
Yeah?
bringing men to the conversation. Because for one, men don't listen to women, and most men don't respect women. And also, I don't believe men learn or change by being told something, especially if it comes from the mouth of a woman. One of my leadership mantras is, if your situation doesn't change, you change. And I think the only way for things to truly change is for us to change how we move, because in a lot of ways, women uphold the systemic culture that we are in. We uphold in a lot of ways the how it the environment favors men. And I think once we begin to contradict that and we change for our betterment, then maybe, hopefully, by God's grace, like that can change. But I honestly don't believe that talking to men in the way that we would talk to women would work.
Yeah, well, no, I wasn't saying to tell them what to do. Just invite them.
Of course.
Just invite them to take a look and see what we've created, kind of thing. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw something in. Sorry.
No, go for it.
Okay.
Go.
I'm also Canadian from Montreal, and I feel like there's a bunch of Canadians here. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on. But I said sorry, and I was like, oh yeah, that's so Canadian. So I'll just throw that out there. But what was interesting about what Nay was saying, and this was just going in my head right now, as a content creator myself, building out this business, I turned 31 a few days ago. But the minute I turned 30, every question I got, every second question was, when are you having kids? And, you know, I realized this too, that this girl boss notion that we developed of, you know, an entrepreneur, woman entrepreneur can also be a girl boss, can also do this and that and all these hats. I realized that we've set ourselves to fail as women, believing that we can do it all. And I'm not saying that women cannot, but I really, and I don't have kids, but I really do believe there is a choice you make, right? Which is whether to have kids or to not have kids, or whether to have a nanny or to not have a nanny. But again, I only hear this amongst women. And so I like to tell my men around me, like, well, you should be the baby daddy and you should stay home, and start that conversation with them, because I'm fully aware that, first of all, it's expected of us to be the caregivers all the time, but also like mentally in my head, I always tell myself there's going to be a moment in time where if I am asked to be on a stage and to be somewhere, but I cannot be with my kid, I know that I will feel guilty. I just know that, and I don't have kids right now, but I'm fully aware that there are going to be choices, but it's allowing us to reset that narrative, because I've heard about this for a long time, this girl boss movement of we can do it all. And I want to sort of rephrase that even for ourselves on this day of International Women's Day, that we don't need to do it all. I don't want to do it all, right? Like this like notion of like we can do it all. I don't want to do it all. How's that? Like, how about we change that narrative too?
Yeah. I agree. I don't want to do it all either.
No, I don't want to do it all either. Even just building your own business can feel like all, regardless of anything else. So just learning how to move in the energy of that, and like, whoo, how do I kind of flow and slow and trust but still build? And I mean, even that is huge, let alone having more components entering the scene. So absolutely, I want to do less. I want to do less. I want to do less, and I want to have the biggest impact with less impact in the biggest sense of the word, right? I mean, that's my girl goal. Hashtag girl goal.
I love that girl
Hashtag girl goal. Oh, I love it. Melina, that's a topic that like, oh yeah, we could dissect all day. Like I am in the thick of it. I have a toddler, my one and only, and I like every day is a journey for me to figure out like, how do I divide my time? How do I allocate enough of my emotional energy and enough of the energy that I can give to others across this sphere that's just like all consuming? We need to have another one of these. I know we're coming up on like the 1.5 hour mark, so we'll probably wrap things up. But if you guys are down, we should totally do another one of these. I'm doing a space tomorrow, same time on Twitter Spaces, just kind of like a larger, broader conversation, but along some of these same topics. So I'd love to have you guys all speak if you're around for that.
Yeah. You might also say I love the container of this, because I think that makes it feel so much more supported, especially when we're talking about like
intimate,
very vulnerable, heavy,
I love this,
deep things. Like, you know, from a coach's perspective, a container that is set like this is so powerful for change and safety and security. So I love this element that you were able to bring in, Tay, because I think that's what made this conversation so supported, you know, that we were all able to talk freely. And
I love you guys.
Yeah,
we should do this regularly if you guys are down. Like we could,
I would love
a
that
monthly thing, maybe. I don't know, but
I would love it.
I see Melina taking a picture. We should take a picture.
Oh my God, can you?
Everything is content.
Screenshot or.
I'm doing it. I love it. All right, guys.
And thank you, Taylor, for organizing and setting up such a safe space for courageous exploration. It's awesome.
This is so good. I love dissecting this stuff. I love having just like this wide array of voices and perspectives on this. I think it's healthy. It's good. It moves us forward. These are the things that help us together on this momentum forward in it. And I think it's important to keep having these conversations. So we'll need to like start up like a little group chat or something happening on Twitter. But I really appreciate you all, Pia, Hayden, Justine, Nay, Naomi, Melina. You guys are amazing. And I'm excited to do this again. This is recorded, so you guys can always like share it with people if you want. You can share it on your socials, do whatever you want, or you can just like use it for yourself and rewatch it to be reminded of all the genius stuff that we covered. Because this was awesome. But I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and end the broadcast, but sending lots of love and light and happy Women's Day vibes out there to all of you. Yay! Thank you, ladies. Have a great one.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.